Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. This must mean it is time for you and I to go monster hunting once again, because we do make such a great tandem, don't we? Much better. It is important to get your nutrients and be fully revamped, recharged, and ready to battle the infamous Dogman. So without further ado, it is time for Jessica and myself to take a walk into the darkness.
My creatures
I'm
of the
kidding.
night, yes, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Again, we have the Cryptid Huntress. Yes, Jessica Jones is popping in to help us dive in to this infamous Dogman topic. How are you doing tonight, JJ?
Hey, Star Fox. I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me come hang out with you tonight.
I always have time to hang out and learn from you, my friend, and collaborate. So again, you are the one that's pretty much the superstar here. So thank you for popping in.
Oh, I'm down for it anytime. We got lots to talk about.
Yes, I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and I'd like to hear some of these updates and just some of the adventures you've been on and what you're going to head into.
Oh man, I do have a dogman hunt coming up next week, and I haven't announced exactly where I'm going, or exactly when I'm leaving, but I am heading out. I'm going to be going out with my buddies from Cryptid Warfare, and we've got. I don't know what I got myself into, man. I really don't. It's we're going to be out there bivouacking, hiking miles and miles into the woods, deep woods, where there's been some dogman activity. Bigfoot pods or families have been seen out there, and it's been scaring people for years, actually. So we're heading out there next week. I'll be miles away from phone service and internet and all that stuff, and I think I'm more worried about the heat than I am the dogmen. But we got that coming up next week. And I've also had some really great interviews over on my channel with some experiencers, some people who have actually encountered not only dogmen, but what they claim to be could be lichens or werewolves.
Wow, staying super busy as we all expect from you. So this is good stuff. Excellent, excellent. And if you would like to dive into that aspect right there, let's get this rolling because that sounds gnarly.
It's super gnarly. And I had Javier Morales of Cryptid 559. He covers the area of Fresno, California. Some of the parks out there, Yosemite, I believe, Sequoia National Park, different area. I mean, he covers some large ground out there. He and his team, I believe it's his cousin and some friends of his. They've been doing some serious cryptid research, and with doing all this research, they're out there kind of. I think they were started off looking for Bigfoot, okay, but they have encountered everything from pterosaurs to dogmen, okay, and he was telling me about this really interesting story, which I thought he was going to be telling me a Dogman story. It turns out this Dogman had clothes on. Okay, it had ripped shorts. And so that made him, and I agree, I believe that could actually be more like a werewolf or a lichen or something. But I mean, I don't hear a whole lot of stories of dogmen wearing clothes. And he said that this thing was massive. I mean, massive, just bulging muscles, big, gigantic, dogman, potentially a werewolf or a lichen of some sort. But it was on a hill. It didn't charge at him or hurt him. But it was, I think he said it was near an orange orchard, like an orchard of trees with some fruit. Okay. And there's a whole lot of paranormal activity that accompanies this area right here. It kind of encompasses that orchard, from ghost to dogmen to all sorts of other stuff he's experienced out there. But I thought it was really interesting that he said that this dogman or lichen had ripped pants on. Now, is that something that you guys get reports of with the NADP?
Jeez, I'm some nightmare fuel right there, and that's super intriguing. And I wouldn't say it's a massive amount, but yes, I've fielded a few of those myself personally. And our friend and my good friend BBR Investigations, Deborah Haswell, she really updates me a ton with some UK stuff, because obviously I'm not over in the UK. And she's told me about it, a few reports over there in the mountain ranges, I believe near Scotland, where some people have reported things like that. And I also know, I believe Brian Seach did a really good job. And like he says, you never really want to use the word, I guess, debunked, but he feels the Shenango Valley dog boy was an actual boy that hadn't issued the condition, because he was able to track down where he actually lived and spoke to neighbors, etc. And but that was reported to have been supposedly a wolf boy wearing clothing. But as I stated, it's not something that is all the time. But yeah, and I've also heard one more about a woman saying she saw one of these beings stealing some clothing off her clothing line as it was drying. So
Wow. Well, definitely gives it a human type of aspect. It kind of gives it human traits when it has those clothes on. So it would lead me to think that it would be more like a werewolf. For sure. But there are diseases that people get where they grow excess hair. I can't remember the name of it. But there's diseases and things where you grow hair on your face. And they used to unfortunately, they put people like that in the circus back in the day. There's pictures like, what they call it, freak shows and stuff, unfortunately, was the name of it. But they would put those kids and the adults, and they travel the country and the world with hair all over their faces. They look like werewolves.
Werewolf syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what if some of those people actually were werewolves? I don't know. So interesting food for thought there. But nonetheless, this does happen. There are reports, and I know, Deborah, that's awesome. There's so many dogman and werewolf reports coming out of Scotland and England, over there in the UK. I was actually talking to Vic Hunda from Dogman Encounters this past week, about a week ago. And I was asking him about the werewolf portal over in the UK. Are you familiar with that?
I believe I saw, I think it was, I don't know if it was directly Jody that posted that in the NADP admin chat, but somebody did. It might have been Jen. One of our regional managers, or Jody, did post that. I didn't get a chance to really graze too much through it, because we were trying to figure out whether that had any sort of merit or who the news outlet was. But that was pretty much the last I heard of that. Yes.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know a lot about it. It was at a place called Canuck Chase
Yes,
in
Canuck
England,
Chase,
and
yes.
there's a whole lot of other paranormal activity that goes down there. But one of the cryptids that's been seen in that area, potentially coming in and out of this portal, was a werewolf. Okay, or werewolves. I believe they're talking about ghosts and black-eyed children there. I love covering the black-eyed kids. That's such a cool topic. And they're so mysterious and scary, and never let them in. Okay, don't let them in your house. Don't let them in your car. Don't let them in anything. Okay, don't let them in your energy field. Actually, but I think I'd be a little more scared of black-eyed kids than I would a werewolf. I don't know. But yeah, I was asking Vic about that, and of course Vic, I don't know. He's he was not so much into like the portal aspect and the werewolf portal, but we did have an interesting discussion about that. That's over on my channel if you guys want to hear that. But yeah, I think it's a thing. I mean, I do believe that there are portals, and I do think that some of these creatures, I think more likely a dogman will be coming out of a portal than a werewolf. Okay, but I think that I personally believe that dogmen potentially could use portals to roam around and go from place to place and stuff like that. But this is a thing. There's somebody that actually wrote a book on it. Can't remember the name of the book. Werewolves and Dogmen in the UK potentially. But yeah, this is something that came out recently in the news, in the media, and people are talking about it. So I brought it up with Vic. Okay. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about it. Okay. But I was just wondering if you had heard of it.
Sounds super interesting. And yeah, no, we definitely have. All right. So I believe Jody breaks it down into 3 different aspects as to what he potentially believes it could be. And that's pretty much what the rest of us believe here at the NADP is either extraterrestrial, paranormal, or physical. And we get the majority that seem like it's physical, but yet we do definitely field ones that seem to be paranormal and also some point in the element of extraterrestrial. So yes, we've definitely had some where people have claimed to see the portals, etc. Yet, as stated, a lot of them are people just driving down the road and seeing it eating roadkill and getting up and then leaping out of the way, or running through their backyard, or sitting in their backyard watching and looking at them. So a lot of the reports are like that, but as stated, there have been some where people claim that they saw UFO activity, etc., which is very intriguing, and that brings an interesting element to it. And I have a hypothesis, which could be a theory eventually, is that obviously Bigfoot and Dogman are going to be intellectual. I mean, any animal, if these are animals or even animals in general, like bears and things, are intellectual. And my squirrel, for example, okay, she looks up and sees the leaves coming down in the sky. She loves the change of seasons. She looks at her reflection in the water. She uses her hand to play with it. Okay, so now if there's something in the sky, right, and we're like, well, what the heck were those lights? What if the Dogman and Bigfoot were just as intrigued as we were, because they're able to definitely comprehend what is occurring above them, and they see these massive lights? Maybe they're interested in, well, which could be a coincidence why we're seeing it at the same time we're seeing them, or maybe, yes, they could potentially be coming from that. So it's really interesting, definitely.
It is, yeah. I've talked, I want to say in depth, but I've talked a little bit about the UFO connection and Dogman with Todd Metz. Okay, you might know Todd. I think he's been on your show before. He's with the
Yes,
West
yes.
Coast Dogman Project. Seriously awesome dude. I really like Todd a lot. He came on my show this past weekend, and I did not realize that he is a former game warden. Okay, out of Connecticut. That blew my mind, and it really changed the whole trajectory of my conversation with him that night when I found out he had been a game warden, because that's a big deal, especially a person who is a serious researcher into Dogman, interviewing people all the time with a serious interest in cryptids and especially Dogman. Being somebody who's spent a lot of time in the woods, and I always can appreciate a good conversation with a game warden when it comes to cryptids. So that was a fantastic conversation. But he's really interested in the UFO connection to Dogman, and we have a definite UFO connection to Bigfoot in my world. They're often spotted in the environment when the UFOs are spotted in the environment when we're having Bigfoot experiences, and there's some sort of survey that he was telling me about where they were kind of I guess they were checking off boxes with like Dogman encounters with who all had experienced a UFO at the time, and the percentages were pretty high. Okay, like something strange was going on in the sky when the Dogman was spotted, or the werewolf, or whatever it was. So super interesting. It's worth looking into for sure, because I think there's a connection. There's definitely an ET connection to a lot of these cryptids, and that's one of the ongoing jokes. One of the things we kind of joke about on my team is all roads lead back to ET.
Excellent. No, it's very true. And yes, Todd is the man, and he was speaking about some of that stuff on my show recently. I can't remember if it was the first episode we did or the most recent one. Yet, you know how it is. You can push out a ton of content, and you do. Yet, same thing. I pretty much. I'm not a one person team because you're here right now, so you're part of my team. But when it comes to editing, I do all my editing myself. So I have it's great, but no exaggeration, probably 20 videos to edit always. So there's like a chain so that I move down because even a 35-minute video takes me anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 hours, depending on the artwork I'm trying to line up with it and depending on everything that's trying to unfold into the video as if like I'm trying to correct audio, etc. So it's definitely something that you pour the effort into, but it is really cool again, like I said, to be able to speak to others such as yourself. But I got to get his next video out because I believe it might have been either on that, like I said, that episode or the previous one where he dives into that and speaks about some of the extraterrestrial aspects that he has heard about. So there's definitely, as you stated, something there. And all three categories, I believe people are witnessing them. I just feel I know a little bit more about the potential physical and potentially extinct animals that could still be existing and present day animals that fall into some of the sightings. And I feel really comfortable about being able to present quality stuff for that. Yet when it comes to paranormal and the extraterrestrial, super interesting, but I have done zero really research on that myself in regards of trying to put together my hypothesis into my theory. So that's why it's always great to have people such as yourself and Todd and such be able to speak about it and also educate me. But then I'm able to transfer individuals to you folks where you can help them out better in that aspect. Because, like I said, I can sit here all day and night and speak to you about the potentially extinct and existing animals. Yet I can hear and listen all day to people tell me the super cool paranormal and extraterrestrial stuff. But unfortunately, my responses aren't very justified because I don't have the knowledge to justify it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense. Hey, send them all to me, okay? If anybody's got any kind of paranormal stuff, because we're experiencing all that out in the field. We're not just out there tracking Bigfoot and tracking Dogman and tracking whatever, and having experiences with those and encounters. We're experiencing all sorts of weird stuff that we can't even explain or comprehend. Okay, like it's hard for us when your teammate turns into a ball of light and shoots across a field. Okay, that's kind of hard to explain. Okay, it's kind of hard to explain. So yeah, we have a lot of strange things. Now, getting back to Todd and talking to him about being a game warden, I was actually able to ask him about tracking and the different animals that he had seen in the woods, and talking about the identification of potential dogman tracks and sign with other animals out there. And we got into the conversation about these unspecified animal attacks that have been happening all over the United States, and the potential for those attacks to have been done by dogmen and or to have been potentially done by big cats, bears, any other kind of wildlife. Okay, that's not dogman. Okay, and so we had some really, really cool, interesting conversations about that, and we really got into the Brenda Hamilton case a little bit. Talked about the. We were talking about like. I was asking him. Okay. Don't you think that a tracking team would have gone in if she'd been attacked by an animal? A tracking team would have been called in to identify tracks around her body and stuff. Like, it just seems like it seems very suspicious. I think we both agreed that it just seemed very suspicious. And if they'd had a good tracking team that had been called in immediately after that attack, and like a lot of these other attacks, like that little kid that was in Kentucky that got unalived by a big animal of some sort, canine potentially. It just takes a good tracking team to know what they're doing to come in there, and they can identify what kind of animal that was that took those people and attacked them. So to me, it doesn't make sense, StarFox. Okay, it doesn't make sense that these animals are still unidentified when all it takes is a good tracking team to come in there to find out where the tracks are and what kind of animal it was.
Very valid right there. And I couldn't agree more with everything just stated. Yet, unfortunately, you would like to think, and I would like to think that, well, officials that are supposed to be dealing with these type of situations are always the most comprehending individuals. Yet I've seen some things that really make me scratch my head, meaning I was watching something in the background while I was researching. It's called Explore With Us, EWU, and they just talk about real life crimes and things that have occurred. And I believe they have something to do with the judicial system. But either way, they were showing what was occurring. And it's just absolutely like mind boggling sometimes as to how it's unfolding. So it's super creepy, and yet something, as you were stating, is definitely occurring. But as I said, they showed in this video that these officials were at this crime scene, and well, this coat that belonged to a unfortunately deceased individual should have still been on the ground or by wherever it was found, yet somebody had picked it up and hung it on the back of the door by mistake, because when taking pictures of the crime scene, they could see the coat was up there, and because of that, it pretty much just made the whole crime scene not credible. And I've heard of other cases of officials just picking up things with their bare hands by mistake, or throwing down cigarette things, or stepping right on things. And I mean, I know of some cases of things that occurred near me that were botched by some officers just not being the most articulated individuals. Yet those cases you all did speak about definitely reek of some very messed up stuff occurring. You would think the tracking teams and such would be out there, but again, it really all depends, unfortunately, what type of county we're talking about, because Jody makes such a good point about the supposed infamous LBL massacre. There really is no way to ever find out truly who's involved and called to that, because where it occurred, there's so many small districts of deputies that would be sent in, and EMT teams from different areas, all of this. So same thing when it comes to that, like how many people potentially were dealing with a crime scene at once, I guess. And also, is it a area where people can depend on their officials to do proper stuff and not botch things? So it's super, super interesting, like you said, but it definitely reeks of something not good.
Oh man, there's some incompetency going down, but there's also cover-ups, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, if anything ever happens to me, which it won't, okay, it's never going to happen to me, but I have a team of remote viewers and a team of trackers. Okay, that's what we do, and I can guarantee you, it takes one phone call to get the team, lined up, and we will go in and we can not only remote view exactly what just happened, but we can also send a team out to go track whatever down we need to. Okay. And so it's very effective. It's probably the most effective crew you're ever going to experience in your entire life when it comes to crime scenes and things like that, because I've actually put this into use one time. And I had a very close family friend who, under mysterious circumstances, we didn't know he was, we still don't know if he's dead, actually, if he, but his house caught on fire, and under very mysterious circumstances. And I immediately got in touch with the head of my team, and we sent out a remote viewing target, high priority, to everybody on the team. Everybody stopped what they were doing. They hit this target, and everybody had kind of the same data. Okay, pretty much had the same kind of data as to what happened. It was a blind target, so they didn't know what this was. Okay, but we saw that there had been a fight, potential unaliving, okay, and a house burned down. And we actually went to the crime scene that week, and we tracked exactly what happened. We saw exactly what happened, and so anyway, so it can be done. Okay, it can be done. It is very effective, and so I don't buy, because I do it personally. Okay, I go out and track. We do these things. Okay, from a field researcher standpoint, and on a personal basis, it's easy to find out what happened. Okay, when you have a team like I do. So Yeah, and that's why I enjoy doing these remote viewing targets. I have a show that I do on Thursday nights where I talk about some of these targets that I'm given, and you'd be surprised actually with that Brenda Hamilton case. I was given that as a blind coordinate remote viewing target, and I saw a big cat. Okay, so what I was remote viewing was an animal like a cat had jumped down from a tree and attacked her. And so I stand by that. I do believe it was a cat. Um, that was in my data, and it was a blind target. Okay, but there are people, and that's why I think it's important that we don't chastise people that are like remote viewers. Okay, I had a hard time in this in some of the communities coming out. It was easier to come out as a Bigfooter than it was a remote viewer. But when you have someone who is highly trained military style in remote viewing, if you can solve some crimes and some mysteries by sending a remote viewer in to do it, why wouldn't you? Okay, especially when it comes to these dogman cases where people have potentially been attacked by a dogman.
That's some nightmare fuel right there. And I'm going to actually add a little bit more frosting on the top here in a second. But first, I'm just going to be sarcastic here, but yeah, not really. Please tell me my future is going to be good, right? Please remote view me my success ratio sometime. Help. But so the thing.
Call me now. I'm just kidding.
Yes, please. I know, right?
Call me now.
You're awesome. But yes, no, that is like you said. It makes it so much more distinctible as to what occurred. And what you said with the black cat, like I said, I'm going to add some stuff here.
It was a big cat. When this happened, it was what I was seeing. It appeared to be dark when I was remote viewing. Okay, and but something came from a tree and pounced. Okay.
Okay.
I also was picking up the data included chipped and collared as well. Now we hear about that if you follow there are certain channels on YouTube and stuff that talk about the Dogman breeding program. And there's a gentleman that claims to be an insider on that, and I do believe he may have mentioned that their assets are chipped and collared. Okay, some of them are. Some of the dogmen and the werewolves are chipped and collared. So there's that. There's that too. I personally believe that there was a tracking device or some kind of collar or something on whatever attacked her.
That is so creepy. Well, the reason I had asked if it was black or not, but even a large cat, because when Jody and I were speaking, and also in general, there are mountain lions, but there also are black panthers that were people's pets and let loose at points in time. And there's a ton of evidence supporting that they are very quite fine and adapted very well. And they are just basically a bigger, badder version of a mountain lion, more or less. And so what's terrifying about that too, in the LBL in Tennessee, Kentucky area, that's a huge game reserve, which a lot of people don't really actually realize. And unfortunately, there is a ton of hunting accidents in there, which is for another day. But either way, there's a bunch of game animals in there. So obviously mountain lions and these other panthers are going to come there for food sources. And Jody thinks, and I actually think so as well after listening to him and diving in with research with him, that there's a high probability that it might have been black panthers that actually, if the massacre did occur in the LBL, could have been quite likely involved, because two panthers could have easily disposed of the family in that way. And so that's why it's really interesting what you said about the Brenda Hamilton attack, because they're both very similar in regards of how the remains were. And also the little girl was pulled up in the tree. Well, mountain lions pull food up, or panthers later on, to eat too. So it's just super interesting.
Oh yeah, I think we should always consider big cats in these attacks. I actually had to do a lot of research on cat bites and the way that they unalive people. And when I did a show on the Brenda Hamilton case on my channel, when I was revealing some of the remote viewing data and the analysis of it, and I gave an entire presentation on tracking big cats, the difference between cats and canines and felines. Okay. And so I think that's important too. It's important to teach the general public, I think, about tracking a little bit. And I ain't got time to teach everything I know online. Okay. But we do a lot of tracking out in the field. Okay. And I've done a lot of tracking courses with my teams. And I think that's partly why sometimes there's not a lot of tracks. And I think it was explained away by, what I saw was something that jumped down from a tree. So you're not going to get a whole lot of tracks when something jumps down from a tree and then jumps back up into a tree.
I love that
You're
you
going to have a
just
few
said
there.
that. Yes, because actually I was just going to ask you that because we do need to let you go soon. But the large cats, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I understand and what I've listened to and what I've read, do not enjoy leaving footprints whatsoever. They do everything
Mm,
pretty much in their power to walk on rocks, grass, logs, trees to stay so something doesn't know you're around. So, yes, so in these instances, when there aren't many footprints or any at all, well, yes, if something's using the trees, then there wouldn't be footprints, right?
that's correct. There won't be a whole lot of footprints. And I believe she was drug into, in the case of Brenda Hamilton, she was drug into a drainage ditch.
Mm-hmm.
Full
Mm-hmm.
of water. I don't know if she rolled over into it to try to get away from this animal. I'm going to say a cat. Okay, I can safely say, according to my data, I do believe it was a cat. But there just weren't a lot of tracks. Okay, not a lot of tracks. Now it's pretty brutal how big cats will attack. They go
Yes.
from they usually will attack you from behind, and they go for your head. They crush your skull, and they bite your neck.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and like I said, it's pretty brutal, but it's I want to say it's kind of quick because they go in for the chomp pretty fast.
Yes.
Um, but um, but yeah, I think that we need to look first into cats. Okay, that would be my first culprit if I saw something that looked potentially dogmanish. Okay, like a dogman had done it. I have a very good friend, my buddy Robbie. He does a podcast. He sent me a picture yesterday and called me. I don't know if they're probably going to talk about it on their show tonight or this week sometime. But he's up in Missouri right now with DA, and they're doing some research. And he sent me a picture of what they found I guess it was a couple nights ago. It was a deer hide and a leg, like a carcass, a partially eaten carcass, I guess, of a deer, but it was up in a tree. Okay. And my first thought always is a cat.
Yes.
Okay, a big cat. But of course, he's like, well, it's either a cat or a dog man or a Bigfoot, So I was like, well, those are my top three, but I'm always going to say cat first. Okay, big cat first. But
Eagles
that's
do
just
that
me.
too, correct? Though, like a bald
Oh
eagle, people
yeah.
don't realize. Like, so I was
Yes.
watching something the other day, a bald eagle chick. Okay, it didn't even have its white head yet. It had injured itself, and the vet was going in to work on it, and she was explaining that still at that age, it has enough power in its claws to break the back of a young caribou or a middle-sized
Hmm.
caribou. So yeah, of course. Wouldn't eagles carry things up in the tree as well? I'm not saying it's not a dog
Yeah.
man like you were saying as well, but there are specifically potential logical reasons as to why an animal's body part could be in a tree by a known predator.
Yeah. Well, for sure. And and it's typical Bigfoot activity as well. Okay,
Hmm.
so I go by what I know, and that's cats and Bigfoot. Okay, cats and Bigfoot. Now I do believe that they're, in the case of that family that was mauled at the LBL, I do believe that those were potentially dogmen. Actually, I do, and I had been given that as a remote viewing target. That was gruesome and terrible. Okay, that was a terrible attack, but it was very much when it comes to, there's potentially a kid that had been drug into a tree, and that is cat-like behavior. Okay,
Hmm.
it's cat-like behavior, but in that case, I think it was probably a dog man that did that.
Which, like you said, yeah,
Um,
exactly. Which is that type of behavior as well too. So
mhm.
it is a catch-22, but it is also important, as you stated, to make sure to try to look at the things potentially that it could be first before always just jumping. Like some people just always want to think that no matter what, oh, it's got to be a cryptid. Like Jody was stating, someone sent him a picture about a 2x4 that was pretty high up in the tree. Well, like Jody was saying, that's an area that had high winds all the time. Tornadoes are in that
Mhm.
area. So potentially, yes, wind could have thrown that up there. Tornado could have, it could have fallen from somebody's, helicopter or et cetera. Like it didn't necessarily have to be a unknown entity that pulled this wood all the way up there.
That's right. You're going to learn quickly when you get into the Bigfoot, cryptid, dogman research arena, especially the field investigator arena. When you're out there looking for a Bigfoot, sometimes people will think if they're not a seasoned researcher, if you're out there looking for Bigfoot, everything's a Bigfoot. If you're out there looking for UFOs, everything's a UFO. If you're out there looking for Dogman, everything's a Dogman.
Yes.
But that's really not the case. That's why my number one must have with a teammate is an open mind. Okay.
Yes.
Keep your mind open. Don't label things. Don't assume everything is one cryptid. Don't assume it's even a cryptid. You got to rule out the logical explanations first. Okay. Logical animals. Know your area. Know your animals. Know what you're dealing with out there. Know the lay of the land before you start assuming that everything is a Bigfoot or everything's a Dogman. And I think that's just super important when it comes to field researching, especially because there's so much out there. Just keep an open mind about it because you never know what you're going to get.
Preach, my friend, and I again could not agree with everything you stated tonight. So thank you for taking time out of your super busy schedule and hanging out with us again. And I always look forward to our next collaborations, and make sure you stay safe on this next expedition you're heading out on. And you will have to, when you make it back, update everybody to all the great stuff.
Oh, don't worry. Everybody will know when I make it back alive, okay? I'm gonna put it out there as soon as I get some phone service that I survived, okay? But I'm not telling everybody exactly when I'm going. But you'll know when I get back, I can promise you.
Thank you for everyone who stopped by for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. If you did enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm. And remember, there are monsters out there that are worse than any human you can imagine.